Ang susunod na programa ay rated PG. Ito ay nangangailangan ng patnubay at gabay ng magulang para sa mga batang manonood.
Warning. The following content may contain elements that are not suitable for some audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
The Ghost of the Tower of London. Anne Boleyn haunts the Tower of London. About the Tower of London has been a major landmark on the skyline of the city of London since the 11th century. The construction of the Tower of London began in 1078 by William the Conqueror as a symbol of his power and as a tool to subdue any of his conquered people who might be tempted to rebel against him. Successive English monarchs continued adding to the Tower of London, and it became home of the crown jewels and the royal mint and the house of a menagerie of exotic wild animals owned by the king. But it is a prison for traitors and enemies of the crown that the Tower of London is most remembered for, and few who entered by Traitor's Gate were fortunate enough to return to the freedom of the world outside. More frequently, their last glimpse of the sun and the world they were leaving behind came as they were waiting on the scaffold for the axe to fall. So perhaps it is not surprising that the Tower of London's bloody history has led it to become known as one of the most haunted buildings in Great Britain. When did the hunting start? The first reported sightings of a ghost in the Tower of London was during the time of Henry III, when some workmen were constructing the inner curtain wall. The very angry ghost of St. Thomas Becket, the murdered Archbishop of Canterbury, suddenly appeared and smote the new wall with his cross and reduced it to a heap of rubble. King Henry III was very concerned by this apparition, as St. Thomas has been murdered by followers of his grandfather, King Henry II. After pondering on how best to appease the angry ghost, he decided to build a chapel to St. Thomas a Becket within the walls of the Tower of London, and luckily the Archbishop's angry ghost has never been seen again. Ghost of Tower Green. Tower Green was where the privileged few were executed, away from the jeering crowds of Londoners who gathered there to watch the executions of traitors and criminals. Many of those who were executed on the Tower Green were women, including several queens: Queen Anne Boleyn, Queen Catherine Howard, and Lady Jane Grey. All met their deaths on the scaffold on Tower Green, and their tragic ghosts are said to regularly return to the spot where they met their end. Anne Boleyn's ghost is spotted wandering headless through the passages of the Tower of London, and in 1864 a guard is said to have challenged her headless apparition but fainted away when his bayonet went straight through her. Anne Boleyn has also been seen leading a procession of lords and ladies down the aisle of the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula towards her final resting place under the altar. Lady J. Grey's ghost was seen in 1957 on the anniversary death by the guards, who describe her as a white shape that formed on the battlements. The wraith of her young husband, Guilford Dudley, has also been sighted crying in the Beecham Tower. The 72-year-old Countess of Salisbury was executed on Tower Green in 1541, but reputedly refused to lay her head on the block and was hacked to death by the executioner. Her ghost is supposed to return to Tower Green on the anniversary of her death and reenact her grisly end, being chased around the scaffold by an axe-wielding executioner for eternity.
For centuries, the walls of the Tower of London have soaked up the sounds of torture, execution, murder, suicide, and grief. Even today, dark cries echo within its halls. Is the Tower of London really haunted? Find out as Paranormal TV lets the truth be told about the haunting of the Tower of London. There is a theory that ghosts are inconsolable spirits, reliving moments of intense emotional impact, almost as if they're trapped in some bizarre time lapse. Growing up in England, ghost stories become a part of life. With a long, bloody history stretching back more than 900 years, the Tower of London is the perfect setting for some of the most famous hauntings in the world.
Tower of London? Oh dear. Well, there are some spine-chilling tales to tell you about that one. You know, you really can't expect anything else, with all the murders and the suicides and the executions. The place was a regular bloodbath.
On record, there are 2,900 names of prisoners who were held in the tower over the centuries, from royalty to paupers. Heavy footsteps sounding through empty hallways, headless figures floating around, and sudden gusts of wind whipping through where there were no open doors or windows. Hair-raising accounts that leave a chill in the air and your heart in your throat. Inside the White Tower, the torture chamber, the wretched were tormented and ultimately left to die horrid deaths.
The guards who patrol the tower at night claim to have heard agonizing screams echoing through the doors of the White Tower. They say it could only be Anne Askew. Well, who knows? Maybe it is.
Accused of witchcraft centuries ago, Anne Askew was brought to this hellhole. In order to get her to confess to her crimes, her body was almost torn apart on the rack. Eventually, she died, her screams the only testimonial of her suffering. Earning its name through the countless murders committed here over the centuries, the Bloody Tower is still haunted today. Most famous is the 15th century murder of the two young princes, who have been sighted strolling hand in hand. A grim reminder of their brutal deaths. Their story is a sad one. Terrified of the two princes' claim to the throne, King Richard III secretly ordered their killings. And one night, while the two brothers were sleeping, they were strangled in their beds. Their bodies were hastily buried, first in the basement of the Wakefield Tower, and then at the foot of the staircase. Another place where victims were brought to their knees in merciless torture is the Queen's house. Witnesses have claimed to have heard the grinding sounds of the torture rack, and of course, the screams